Ahoy there, me hearties! This be Captain Silverhook, and you're listening to the Two Old Pirates podcast. Set sail for an open sea of stories, tales, and some really crazy stuff. I expect you to like and subscribe, lest you be walking the plank. Ha ha ha!
Welcome to podcast 118 of the Two Old Pirates. I'm your boy Eric. A pretty cool story about our little hometown of Rockport and about a young man who ran for mayor. Let's go back a long way. This is spring of 1996. Local elections were getting ready to happen. You had school board, you had a city council, and you had the mayorship. At that time, there was a college student in town who was over at his parents having lunch. He had graduated college. He was doing his student teaching. He had the whole world in front of him. And as he was reading the letters to the editor that day in our local Rockport pilot, there was a letter from a woman who basically stipulated all the different things that were about to happen if the person who was running unopposed for mayor won. And so this person sat there at the dinner table, eating lunch, reading this, fascinated by politics, getting a degree in government, and wanting to teach that. And as he read the letter to the editor, it stirred some emotions in him. It brought up different facts and things that he didn't know, and most people in Rockport probably didn't know. And the point of the entire subject of what got this little fire burning in him about trying to, become part of our democratic process and stuff was that if you're from Rockport and you remember the old days where Cinema 4 is running that way towards Fulton, away from Rockport, and then you had Fulton, in between, that area is known as no man's land. And in this letter to the editor, they were explaining about how all those people were about to be brought into the city of Rockport under the new city council and the mayor, and that they had decided that every single person that was going to be brought into the city of Rockport had to go by the Rockport rule of being on Rockport city water and city sewage. So all those people would have to be tapped in to Rockport city water and city sewage. That's not that big of a deal. As this young man read through it, he saw that the city was going to make these people, some of them on fixed incomes, have to pay, in excess of $1,000, $2,000, maybe $3,000 to tap in from their house all the way out to the road to get water and sewage. Now, when the country club on the other side of the road had been put in, that's also near no man's land, they did not have to pay to have those things done. That was done by the builders, and the city of Rockport had said, yes, they can just tap in. And now on the other side, you had people that were far lower income, and they were going to have to pay. So this young man sat there and read it, and it said, please, is there anybody out there, even Mickey Mouse, that would run against the person who's running for mayor to try to stop this? And this young man sat there and thought about it, and he went ahead and decided to talk to his mom and dad about it, the people that he trusted the most. And of course, they had never been around anything like that before. And they're like, I don't know, do you think you should? Do you think you could? They looked in, and the person who was running for mayor had just been on the city council. So they already had their themselves entrenched in the city government. And now they wanted, the top seat. So they were gung-ho about bringing no man's land into Rockport and making all those people have to pay that amount of money, to tap in. One thing that the young man saw was that early voting had already come and gone. So there was no putting up signs or advertisements or anything like that to go ahead and try to get some early votes. Those were already all sealed and voted for, and anybody who voted for that the only person running unopposed. So the young man went and talked to some of his friends who didn't know anything about this, and he talked to a couple of his teachers and professors And one of his professors that he had just had before he graduated said, do it. Win or lose, do it. Because it's a once in a lifetime thing to be, called and feel the calling and to go ahead and follow through and to make a change. Now, did the young man think that he was going to have a chance at all? No, not a shot in hell. But somebody had to. So the young man, after talking it over with his parents, he had about $200 to $300 in the bank. He was a young college student, had just graduated, and how was he going to do any of this? So he asked around some friends, like, hey, can you help me out with this? Can you help me with that? And everybody was like, let's do this. So he went down and filed his name that he would run for the mayorship. The person who was running for the mayor, who had been on the city council, did not enjoy that there was going to be any kind of a contest now. So the young man got together some of his money, and his father said, hey, I'll find somebody who can make up some signs. Not very expensive signs for $300 or something like that, but they made some handmade ones. They went down to Walmart and they got some things to spray up, vote for. And the dad found an old man who liked to partake of alcohol, let's put it that way, and asked him, can you do a good job? Now, the man evidently had a long-standing career in painting and artwork, and for $250 and some beer, he said, let's do this. So he put up, he painted up some signs. Well, during that time period, there was only about 2.5 weeks till the election. It was very, very fast-paced. The young man tried to get his name in the paper as much as he could so that people would go and understand that somebody else was running against this person. A third person then joined, which surprised him, was like, hey, this is awesome. Let's get some other people involved. Then a phone call came. The phone call came, and the young man answered it, and there was an older man on the phone. In a certain part of Rockport, very wealthy individuals, and they are interested in meeting with the young man. Now, if you've never understood, politics is dirty. Besides everything that you see with Trump and Biden and Harris and stuff like that, it's always been dirty. Look at Mr. Smith Goes to Washington in 1939, the major motion picture. It showed how dirty it was then. It's always been dirty. You get into politics to try to gain power and money and influence, and some or all people do things to climb that ladder. And it's like, hooray for me, screw you. Well, the young man didn't have very much money to go ahead and compete against this much wealthier person. And so he took it upon himself to confide with his father, and his father said, you can at least listen. Go listen, see what they have to say. Well, the young man went into an office of a wealthy, well-known real estate person. He saw the secretary. She allowed him to go into the office. He opens up the door, and inside that, it's like out of a movie, very dimly lit. There's a man to the right, and he's working on adding machine, like, he's just adding things up. And there's a man to the left who's on a phone. They're both in leather chairs. And then there's a huge desk, and there's a man sitting behind there, an older man. And he tells the young man to sit down, and they proceed to talk. Over the course of the conversation, the young man is hearing out of the right ear over here, yes, we can put $999 in this one account, and we can go, this person's all like, how many different advertisements can we get? And it's basically asked of him that he is being offered a certain amount of money to, let's say, help him have more signs, be in the news, some radio spots, perhaps even a local television station running an advertisement. This is all amazing to this young man. Is this real? And during the course of the conversation, the young man remembers what his dad says, just listen, just listen. So he listened. And then he asked a question. Why? The young man asked, why do you want to help me? Why would you want to help me? He was hoping that the answer would be, well, we want to help those people over in no man's land so that they don't have to go ahead and pay all that money. That's not exactly what the young man heard. What the young man heard was, let's just say we don't like the person who's running for mayor, and we'd prefer to see you, even though you're extremely young, to be in the mayorship. Okay, that's it. They told the young man, yes, that would be it. He'd have this certain amount of money, have this certain amount of backing, and hopefully it would be able to push him over the top on election day, which was very, very close, to where he could win. And the young man asked, and there's nothing else? The older man kind of sat back in his leather chair, and he said, well, there is one thing. If the young man was successful, any time that there would be a city hall meeting, he would, before a vote happens, excuse himself to the restroom, and he would sit and make a phone call to this man and the other people that are with him that would be donating the money, and let them know what the vote was about, and that they would let him know how they felt. The man knew right away that meant that he'd be bought, that any influence through financial means would equal votes for these people. They were not going to give the money just because they were kind. They expected, if you win, listen to us. The young man sat and thought, this is Rockport, Texas. This is a small town. I'm being offered money so that I can be a stooge for other people. So the woman who's running, they don't want her. They prefer anyone else. And then they need that person to always vote how they want in their best interest. That was it. So the young man had to sit there and think about it and remember what his dad had taught him and who he was. He had to search, because this would have been a lot of money. And this might have helped him even more. But at the end of the day, he shook his head and then shook their hands and said, I'm sorry, I can't accept that. And they were very gracious to him. And they said, okay, we just want to let you know. If you need anything, you know where the office is. He got up and walked out, got in his car, drove away, halfway feeling excited that he was in the game, and halfway feeling scared that he was in the game. Over the course of the next 2 weeks, with those smaller signs that were put up around town, he noticed certain ones went missing. He also got numerous phone calls stating, you can't put your sign here, you cannot put your sign here, you cannot put your sign here. Although that the person running for mayor, the other person, theirs were everywhere. But you have to understand, being a young person who was not politically involved with the town was not the same as somebody who was already on the city council and was in every single club in the town. So one phone call makes the other person's sign disappear. And this happened over and over and over to the young man. He finally told one of his friends, one of his roughest friends, hey, can you drive around at night and just make sure nobody's taking down the signs? And this is before cell phones or anything like that, but he did receive a phone call from the old Circle K just before you cross into Key Allegro in town, where there's a big piece of land off to the right after you come over the first bridge and before you get to the second bridge. And there had been a sign out there for this young man. And as the young man's friend was going around town at night, he did see a pickup truck pulled out over there, and they were about to take it down. And some things were said, and the two men got back in their truck and drove away. I'm guessing pretty frightful. And this went on for about a week or two. And then at Anthony's by the Sea, the young man was invited to speak. There was a forum, and the people that were running for different city council slots and stuff like that. They were all going to speak. And the mayor, the people that were running for mayor were able to speak. And on that night, you heard one person talk about basic things about bringing jobs and all the yada, 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 all the political stuff. And then you had another person talking about what was wrong and what was right about no man's land and about how everybody in the town should be treated equally and there should be things for the people that live here as much as there are for the people that visit here. And that young man got a huge round of applause. And it pumped him up like, hey, I could maybe do something here. Well, come election night, the young man shows up with his friends and they go to the city hall. And at the city hall, there's a bunch of people outside, and the people are like reporters and family members and friends and just citizens. And they bring out this big chalkboard, and it said early voting. And it showed the lady who was running for mayor with all the votes. And it showed the young man's name and 0. And it showed the person who came in third, the last person to run, was 0. So the person who was running for mayor was dominating. And the next two people had no votes because they had joined so late. So they were only going to get votes on election day. During that time period, the young man kept on seeing this older man just sneering at him, just the deadliest, ugliest looks. Finally, the young man went over to him and said, "Sir, do I know you? Did I do something wrong?" The old man looked the young man up and down and said, "I'm so-and-so's husband." That was the person who was running for mayor, the lady. And he said, "I don't like you." And the young man said, "What did I ever do?" And he's all like, "Because of you and getting into this race, we've spent thousands of more dollars than we were going to spend. This was supposed to be easy." The young man felt bad. The young man just wanted to help. So they finally came out and they brought that day's election results. And the young man had actually done really, really well on election day. He was very, very surprised about the amount of people that turned out to vote for him. A no-name young person. And he came in second. And although he didn't win, which he might not have known what he would have done if he would have won, he was still happy that he participated in a democratic process of running for mayor of his hometown. Well, of course, by now you know that young man is me. And 29 years ago, I was that fresh-faced kid. I was the person who went ahead and read that in the newspaper. I was the one who decided, hey, somebody's got to do something. I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm just letting you know that I only remembered this because my students were talking about elections happening where I teach now. And they're like, hey, you should run for office someday. And I was like, and then I thought about it, I was like, oh crap, you know what? These kids don't even know. I don't even remember it 99% of the time. And then I told them, I said, oh yeah, I ran for mayor of Rockport. What? Yeah, I did. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I did it. I don't think I would ever get into politics ever again, just simply because all I heard for literally years afterwards was, hey, you're the guy who ran for mayor. Are you going to run again? Because I would have voted for you, but you were too wet behind the ears. Or, hey, youngin', were you the one that ran for mayor back in 96? Because you know what? If you were just a little bit older, I heard that dozens and dozens and dozens of times over the years, that they were like, they saw the face and they're like, hey, you're the guy who was going to, and it was always because I was just too young. The lady who ran was, I believe, in her 60s, and I was in my early 20s. There was a huge gap there. And they decided, hey, already been on the city council, has already been on all these different clubs in town. She's probably the safe pick. And I understand that, and I have no problems with that. So next year will be the 30th anniversary of when I ran for mayor of my hometown. And I'm sure most of the people that are seeing this probably forgot it or never knew it. It was awesome. It's a memory. It's something cool that I did. It would be very, very hard for me to ever want to do anything like that again, because if 30 years ago it could be, hey, we'll offer you this if you do this. Do you think it's got any better? I don't think so. So That's the 100% true story of when I ran and was unsuccessful 29 years ago this spring. I hope that you enjoyed this podcast episode about our little town of Rockport and how the guy that you've been seeing all these episodes about true crime and different things about Rockport actually almost became mayor. Not really. Not at all, really. But anyways, I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope to have a new episode for you very, very soon. Until then, peace to all pirates.